Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Jared, and in this episode we are going to start working on something that I've been putting off for a long time, and that is readdressing this stuff, the transom assembly. It needs refinished in a pretty bad way. There is some pitting on some of the parts. Not too bad. All of it can be fixed, but we got exposed aluminum, so we're going to do it the right way, take it all the way back to bare metal, etch it, prime it, all that good stuff. So part of the reason this took so long is because I was trying to figure out how I wanted to go about getting this down to bare metal and came to the conclusion that blasting is going to be the best way. So I scoured the internet for a long time trying to find a blast cabinet, and I ended up finding one that is actually big enough for me to go in. So I have a blast cabinet here that I'm actually going inside with the parts. We're gonna get the paint off, and it was only 25 bucks on Amazon, brand new. See how this goes.
Back in 2017, I began a full restoration of my 96 Bayliner by tearing it apart all the way down to the hull. From there, I began the rebuilding process, which included learning to fiberglass, rebuilding an engine and outdrive, learning to fair and paint, and even upholstery. Now, I've bought a 28-foot cabin cruiser, and I'm starting all over. Welcome, my name's Jared. Now get ready, because it's going to be a ship show.
You know, sometimes it's just easier to pay somebody else. Alright guys, as most of you guys are probably cracking up about me crawling into that tent, obviously that did not work out very well. I gave up on that pretty quick. It was a disaster. It was just constantly blowing in my face. I couldn't see anything. It was going everywhere. I got barely any paint off by the time I was out of glass and had to empty it, suck it all up with the shop vac, refill. It was a disaster. So I quickly determined that's not going to be an option, and I need to find somebody to do this for me.
I saying blaze the paint.
And found a guy that's a company close by to me that does this. Gave him a call, and $150 minimum. Still, I think that was well worth it because this is not something I'm going to have to do often. This is an extreme example of refinishing a drive. Typically, you're not down to bare metal and you can just go over it. But because I had exposed aluminum, I need to fill some pitting. I decided to go all the way down to bare aluminum, and we're going to go back with the factory recommended refinishing procedure for Mercruiser with one exception. And that exception is right here. So if you look at the refinishing spec from Mercruiser for their out drives, they start with this, obviously going down to bare aluminum. And the next step after that is actually using something called, it's owned by Bonder right now, but it used to be called AlumaPrep 33, which is an acid etch. And then you go back on top of that with, what's it called? Aladyne 1201 or 1200. So now it's owned by Henkel, which calls it Bonderite, this crap. So if you really want to go this route, that's the stuff there. However, I found out after ordering this stuff that this stuff will pretty much cause your future daughter to have 12 testicles. So I was not interested in using that. So I found this stuff by chance. It is called Prekote, and it is basically a much safer version of that. This is actually approved now by Boeing and a bunch of aircraft manufacturers as a replacement for that. So it's kind of proven itself, and it is way safer. So this again is called Prekote right there. I know this all sounds like probably overkill for just painting something, but I don't want to do this again, or at least have to go all the way down to bare metal again. So if I have it to this point, I want to do it as best as I can. So what that process is going to look like for me is, now that these are sandblasted down to bare metal, I am going to take this Prekote, and what you do is you spray it on and scrub it with a emery cloth, a red emery cloth. You basically scrub the surface with it till it kind of makes a lather. You're making sure you get as much as you can, and then you rinse it off. Anyway, that's going to be step one, is doing that. Once these get rinsed off with water, you just let them dry. And then the next step is I'm going to be going on with this epoxy primer called Illuma Protect by Petit. It's a 2-part epoxy primer, and I am going to attempt to spray this. And I have never sprayed paint before, so as everybody does, I went out and bought the $15 Harbor Freight purple gun. I got a desiccant dryer in here. We're gonna figure this out together. We're gonna put on at least 1 to 2 coats of the Illuma Protect, and then we're gonna go on with another couple of coats of this Prekote Protect epoxy primer. So this is basically your low absorption barrier coat, but basically what that's gonna do is give me some additional layers to protect from corrosion, so water getting under the coating. Once that is done, it's going to be ready for the actual ablative paint coating. That is the plan for now. So that's how I'm going to get from this to a finished out drive. And once the coatings are done on this, I can go and start putting everything back together, which I know a lot of you guys have been asking. You took the steering pin out, when are you going to show us how to put it back in? Same with the gimbal bar, all that kind of stuff. So this is step one. We need to get this done, and then we can start the assembly process, which is exciting because I can't wait to get this stuff back on the boat. Okay, so that's the plan. I've had plans before and they failed miserably. Hopefully this one doesn't. Anyway, let's dive into it and get started. All right guys, so that is the primer, well, first Illuma Protect primer done. That is 2 coats. So, I mean, I knew there was some pitting, definitely revealed a little bit more than I thought there was. So the plan for the pitting at this point is I was afraid to go on with any sort of epoxy filler before the primer that's on here because I wasn't sure if it would be compatible with the Illuma Protect primer. So my plan is to continue on and start with the Prekote Protect, which is the barrier coat. And then after that primer is on, I think the plan is going to be to come in with some fairing compound and fill in some of these pits. I don't really care on a lot of this stuff, basically just stuff that's gonna be exterior that you're gonna see, which unfortunately is where most of the pitting is. So like surfaces here, you can see this on the side of the boat. Anyway, that's where we're at. So this is cured, ready to go. So I'm gonna get over here and mix up the Prekote Protect barrier coat, and we're gonna get 2 coats of that sprayed on as well. So let's get that done. Okay, so sorry about the noise. Didn't have time to get the microphone going. So I ran into an issue almost immediately where the paint stopped coming out. And actually what I determined is it was these quick cups I'm using, because the lids actually have a screen built in, which is nice because it filters the paint. But the paint was so thick it wasn't physically going through the screen inside. So I quick had to switch to the cup that came with the gun with no screen, and paint flowed fine through that. So now I know for future reference on the next coat I'm gonna have to use this. That's why I don't have video of me really spraying anything, so it came out pretty good, I think. Alright guys, the paint went on really well, but now is the point where if you guys are doing this as well, you have to make the decision, are you going to completely skip this step, or are you going to spend a lot of time on this step, or somewhere in between? I'm going somewhere in between, and what I'm talking about is filling pits, or fairing. There is some pitting on some of these components. I'm basically just going to fill spots that could potentially cause problems. So like there's a small amount of pitting here, which is actually the sealing face between the drive and the gimbal housing. So obviously I want to fill stuff like that But beyond that, it's mostly those two things for me. It's anything that could potentially cause a problem mechanically or whatever, and anything that's more of like a visual huge issue. Now, because I'm going on with anti-fouling paint, that stuff doesn't look amazing anyway, so I'm not gonna put a huge amount of effort into it, just kind of fill and kind of just make it look better. But I'm not going for showroom quality here. Now, if you are and you trailer your boat and you don't need anti-fouling paint, you want to make it look like a factory refinish, then this is where you're going to spend most of your time on this process, is fairing. But I'm going somewhere in between, so I'm going to get started here. My plan is to use, I've never used this stuff before, but everybody on the internet that seems to have any sort of following gets this stuff for free, it seems like. So I'm going to give it a try, and maybe I'll get some for free in the future. This is okay for below the waterline. That's the main thing you want to check when you're using fairing compound for something like this. My plan is to fair at this stage, fill anything in, and I just need to be very careful that I don't sand through down to bare metal again. That's my biggest concern. So with that being said, I'm going to get some of this mixed up, get my little putty knife things out, and get started. Here we go. All right, guys, that fairing compound has set up and is now time to sand it. So the approach here is going to be the least aggressive sandpaper I can use that will sand the fairing compound but not cut through the paint. So I'm gonna start off with 320 grit, just see how it goes. I tested it in one other little spot. It seems to be more than enough. And really, I'm not even trying to remove material in most places. I actually was able to lay down the fairing compound to fill in the pits pretty effectively without leaving too much extra. So I'm gonna start with this, get this sanded down, and if there's any tough spots where I gotta remove a little bit extra, I'll probably try some like 220, one of these sanding discs. We'll see how that goes, but yeah, let's sand this thing down, and at that point we'll be ready to put another layer of this epoxy barrier coat on to seal everything together, and then it'll be ready for anti-fouling, and this will be officially ready to go, and we can start the rebuild process, putting everything back in. So let me get this sanded down. I'm not gonna show you that. Nobody likes watching sanding, let's be honest. Nobody likes sanding. All right, guys, the parts are off the bench. They are fully sanded and blown off with compressed air, wiped down with acetone, and ready to go. I got them hanging in here again in the paint booth. So yeah, at this point we just need to mix up another batch of that epoxy barrier coat and spray it on. I think one coat should be plenty. Then it'll be ready for anti-fouling paint. So let's do it. All right, guys. The final coat of barrier coat is on, and per the instructions, it's still a little bit tacky, but not transferring to my fingers. So now that we are at this stage, it is time to go on with the first coat of anti-fouling paint. So this is a sort of time critical one. So there's a window where you have to get the anti-fouling paint on before the barrier coat completely cures. Because if you wait too long, then you have to sand it or top coat it again. And I am out of barrier coat now, so I need to get this on because I don't feel like sanding this. Now that we're here, let's go over here and get the barrier coat mixed up, which I already started stirring, and we are going on with Trilux 33, which is basically meant for aluminum outdrives and things like that. So that's the plan. I'm gonna get this mixed up, put in a cup, and ready to spray, and we're going on with our first coat of anti-fouling. We're almost done here. Let's go. All right, guys, that is officially it. That is 2 coats of anti-fouling paint. That feels awesome. That was a lot of work, a lot of time. I apologize because it's been really slow progress getting videos out lately because this has just been eating up a lot of time. But it feels awesome to have this done finally. Super excited to get started with reassembling this stuff. I have everything sitting here. It's been sitting here for like 3 months. So I'm gonna wrap it up at this point for this video because this is getting very long, obviously. So that is gonna do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Don't forget to leave a comment, try and reply to all of them. Thanks for sticking around with these kind of slow videos. It's been, like I said, a lot of work. So appreciate you guys sticking around, and I hope you enjoyed this one, and can't wait to get started on this. Keep putting out more videos, getting the boat fixed. That's what we're doing. All right, we'll see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.